to see you. Great crowd today. Happy that you're with us. Now, next weekend, we move the clocks back an hour. So if you forget that, you're going to be here an hour early, so try not to do that. If you forget it, you're an hour early, you got plenty of time, run down to Krispy Kreme, get me a few, bring them back, and we'll all start the service out great, okay? Sometimes crisis is immediate. You ever thought about that? Crisis often comes when you didn't see it coming. Crisis always arrives at your doorpost when it's the last thing in the world you thought was going to happen. You didn't see it from anywhere. And sometimes crisis appears that way. I don't know where I found this. I've had this for a long time. I keep it in a file folder so I can pull it out when I need to remind myself of it, because it is a reminder to me that sometimes the whole concept of crises in life appears when you didn't see it coming. And so I found this. I put it in a file folder. I pulled it out from time to time. It is an actual insurance form. I've actually copied the form and put it on this so I could always have it. It is a form where a question was asked of an insured person to explain some injuries that they had submitted a claim for. And so this person wrote an explanation of their injuries, and I have often found myself pull this out when I needed to hear it. Let me read it for you. I am a bricklayer by trade. On the date of the accident, I was working alone on the roof of a new 6-story building, and when I completed my work on the roof, I discovered that I had about 500 pounds of brick left over. And rather than carrying the bricks down by hand, I decided to lower them in a barrel using a pulley which was attached to the side of the building at the 6th floor level. And so I went down on the ground, I secured a rope at ground level, and then I went back up to the roof. I swung the barrel out and loaded the bricks into it, and then I went back onto the ground. I untied the rope, and I held it tightly to ensure a slow descent of the 500 pounds of bricks. Are you all visually with me? Huh? Everybody there? Okay. It's a great sentence. You will note in block number 22 of the claim form that my weight is 150 pounds. I guess I didn't take that into consideration, and so due to my surprise at being jerked off the ground so suddenly, I lost my presence of mind and forgot to let go of the rope. And so needless to say, I proceeded up the side of the building at a very rapid rate of speed, and in the vicinity of the 3rd floor, I met the barrel coming down. This explains my fractured skull and collarbone. Slowed only slightly, I continued my rapid ascent, not stopping until the fingers of my right hand were 2 knuckles deep into the pulley. Somebody say, ouch, ouch. By this time, I'd regained my presence of mind and was able to hold tightly to the rope in spite of my pain. But at approximately the same time, however, the barrel of bricks hit the ground and the bottom fell out of the barrel. And devoid of the weight of the bricks, the barrel then weighed approximately 50 pounds. Listen to this next sentence. I refer you again to the information in block number 11 regarding my weight. As you might imagine, I began a rapid descent down the side of the building, and in the vicinity of the 3rd floor, met the barrel coming up. This accounts for my 2 fractured ankles and the lacerations on my legs and lower body. This second encounter with the barrel slowed me enough to lessen my injuries when I fell onto the pile of bricks. And fortunately, only 3 vertebrae cracked. But I'm sorry to report, however, that I lay there on the bricks in pain, unable to stand, and watching the empty barrel 6 stories above me, I again lost my presence of mind and let go of the rope. The empty barrel weighed more than the rope, and so it came down upon me and broke both of my legs. I hope I have furnished enough sufficient information to explain my injuries. That is a crisis. And I got to thinking about that this week. I got to thinking about this idea that's probably not popular to talk about. I don't know anybody likes to talk about it. Is what do the followers of Jesus do in crisis? We are not devoid of that. Crisis happens to all people at all times, in all places. And so if you follow Jesus, what happens to you in the moment of crisis? It's a fascinating concept because the reality is, I say this from time to time, that in a church our size, there is a crisis here every week. Every week. And so you might be here this morning, and you might be one of those people who a week ago you didn't know that that would happen because it happens immediately when you least expect it. And you might be sitting here this morning and you're thinking, I can't believe that he's talking about that today. The reality is there will be multiple people in this room right now who are in the midst of crisis, and we're talking about what do the followers of Jesus do during that. Now, if you're one of those people that, you're smooth and sailing along and you are not in any kind of crisis moment and life is good and things are happening the way you want them to happen, do not get too comfortable. Crisis happens to all people at all places and all times. And so the question arises is what do the followers of Jesus do when it happens? I've learned in my life, predominantly because of my profession of seeing people in crisis, and also due to my age from having experienced personal crisis, that there are some things that happen from the hand of God intentionally, that they only happen in crisis. And the reality is that if you're not looking for them, if you don't know those are going to happen, they are things that happen from God that are incredibly easy to miss. And then you get on the other side of crisis and you didn't even recognize those things when they happened. But for the followers of Jesus, God brings his help in very specific ways, and I want to relay those to you today. I want to relay them so that when crisis hits your home, not if, but when, that you will have learned to look for the things that God does for his children in crisis. Now, we're going to use a story in the Bible to show you how God did that so that you can be aware of how he will do that in your life as well. It's a story that we've all heard about. It's the death of a guy by the name of Lazarus. His family is now dealing with an unexpected crisis moment on the loss of Lazarus. And Jesus shows up in town about 4 days later, and he has a conversation with two grieving sisters of Lazarus, Martha and Mary. And when you're watching the conversation that Jesus has with these ladies, you start to see how God brought some things into that environment that I can tell you he will bring to yours. But you got to know they're coming. You got to be able to watch for them, or they are so incredibly easy to miss. Here's one of them. I want you to think of it in this term. I want you to learn to watch for God's people. That when crisis hits you, that God will send people into your life. Watch that. Be aware of how God will bring that about. It happens to these ladies. In fact, in John chapter 11, where we're told this story, 3 different times intentionally, John wrote that there were multitudes of people who'd come to their home. The 19th verse said, many Jews had come to the town of Bethany to comfort Martha and Mary. And that's something that God will do. Is that God will notice when his children are in crisis moment, and he will begin to propel his people in their personal presence so that they will notice. And the call of God is that you not miss when people come into your life. They are not there accidentally. And so in the moment of crisis, when these people are coming around me and I start noticing the people that God is sending me, allow them to hold you. Allow them to comfort you. Allow them to counsel you. It is the first line of defense that God will give to your crisis, is He will send His people into your life. Several years ago, I was at a vacation Bible school at this church, and after one of the nights, they had this great big carnival out in their parking lot, and they had all these games the little kids were playing, and there was a snow cone machine. They were giving the kids snow cones, and one of the ladies who was working the snow cone machine happened to get her finger in, apparently a little bit too far into the actual ice cutter thing, and just flipped right off the tip of one of her fingers. I mean, it was just gone, blood everywhere. And we fast forward now, that was several years ago, and she still gets teased about that by her friends. I remember one time I went by her and said, give me high four, give me high four. And she goes, that's horrible. The next year she was at the snow cone machine again. Her name was Mary. I went up and said, y'all got Bloody Mary flavor this year? Are you dealing with that? And so now we joke about her all the time. But in that moment, I mean, we are at crisis mode. I mean, she's missing part of her finger. And so they take her down to the hospital, to Jewish, and that big hand center, and it's late at night. It's probably 11 o'clock at night, and she's in surgery, and they're trying to repair some things and kind of get it all set up. And the doctor comes out after surgery, and this is a guy that does hand transplants, arm transplants. I mean, this guy's known all over the world as this just crazy surgeon. And that night, they called him out. He just had to kind of pull a little skin over and a couple stitches. And he comes out into the waiting room, and there's about 35 people there. And I'll never forget his comment. You know, here's this master surgeon known all over the world. He comes out and he goes, all these people here for the fingertip lady? He couldn't believe it. And that's what God will do to you. Is that when you hit crisis, the very first response of God is to send the troops in, to surround His children. And when that happens and you start noticing that these people are coming to me, they're saying things to me, don't neglect what's happening. Is that God is surrounding you with support and counsel and encouragement. During this month, we've tried to take many of our lessons that we've been teaching and applying them to National Breast Cancer Awareness Month in October. And so there were some families in our church that we had asked them if they would come and tell us their story. And one of the ladies that bravely agreed to do that was Katie Denton. Katie's a member of our church here at Eastside. She is battling breast cancer right now for the second time. I said, Katie, you're a warrior. You are fighting this thing. And she sat down and she told me her story. And then we took her story and we put some of it into a film clip. And I want you to listen to just a little bit of what Katie said. And I want you to zero in on how God sent His people. Watch Katie tell that story.
I just kind of felt a lump. And I made an appointment at the doctor, and he said, we need to get this checked out. And that was kind of over, a 6-week period. It didn't move too fast, and I didn't think it was anything. I really wasn't apprehensive. And then they did a lumpectomy, and I still was confident, Then I got the call where they say, bring your husband and come on in. I'm a school teacher. In fact, I'm a retired school teacher now. And I was amazed. I taught 1 week of that school year, and the rest was full of treatment. And I was amazed that initially people avoided me. And then I had one teacher come in, and she just said, Katie, we love you, but we don't know what to say. And we're afraid we're going to say the wrong thing. So we're not saying anything at all. But then at some point before my 4 days of teaching up, that 1 week before I went into surgery, a couple of Christians in my school just said, if you want to pray with Katie, come after school to this classroom. And had about 30 people there, and they all prayed over me. And that was the beginning of that journey. And then at church, the same thing. I remember Doris turning around and said, have you asked the ministerial staff or the elders to pray for you? And I said, not yet. And it was the same thing. I had that moment where everybody prayed over me. And then a couple weeks ago, I had this staff for this round pray over me, and there's nothing like it. So prayer is a big thing. I'm a big believer in prayer. And don't avoid somebody with cancer. I know some people are afraid they're going to say the wrong thing. And maybe you don't need to say anything about cancer at all. Just, smile, give them a hug, just thinking about you, praying for you. That's enough. Trusting in God all the time, trusting in the name of Jesus, and the hope that my physician gave me, and the support from my church and my friends, my family. I think that's how you deal with it.
I think Katie is with us. She has bravely come this morning to be with us. So come on up here, Katie. I appreciate you being brave and telling us your story. She has been with us at each one of our services. She came Thursday and came this morning to our early service and then came to this one. And your husband got on me about that again today. He wants to know when they could expect the royalties from her appearance on the film. But I thank you for sharing your story with us as a warrior and battling this disease. And we want to pray a healing upon her today. We want to just pray for total, complete, absolute healing on her body from the top of her head to the bottom of her feet. We'll pray that for our pretty girl that we're ministering to as a church. And I want to offer the opportunity to pray that for you too. And if you're dealing with this disease and you're fighting it right now, or maybe somebody that you know, maybe somebody you work with, or maybe a relative of yours or a friend, somebody in your neighborhood, but if you want to represent them and ask for God's blessing and healing on their life too, I want you to stand up, and then we're just going to ask God to heal everybody that we have that's representing that. So if you know somebody who's battling breast cancer, why don't you stand up? Let's pray. Let's do that. Father, your word tells us that you can do more than we even ask or imagine. It's hard to wrap our mind around what that means. I guess if I thought of the biggest possible thing to ask you, that for you it would just be piece of cake. And so my prayer is that my sister Katie is completely healed and that this disease is totally out of her body. I ask you to do that. You can choose a lot of ways, as I was sharing with Katie. You can use science and medicine and people, and you can also snap your fingers. You can do whatever you want to do to bring healing. And that's my prayer, is that from this moment on, she just doesn't have this disease anymore. I pray that for our pretty girl that we have been reaching out to this month. And I pray that for every person that is being represented by those who stand right now. You know who those people are. You know. Would you please bring healing? This disease is a really big deal, but it's nothing to you. Please bring healing so that you will someday receive all the glory and all the praise.